back. Welcome back everyone to the dark, disturbing, scary, and creepy games Iceberg. I want to start this one off by thanking everyone for checking out the original, or my other Icebergs, and deciding to subscribe. I genuinely didn't expect these to reach more than, at most, a couple thousand views, and the support has been greatly appreciated. I also appreciate the feedback left on the videos, and I do read every comment, good or bad. Back to the actual video. Over the next couple tiers, we're going to be getting into the decently obscure shit. You may recognize a few, or a lot of these games on the next few tiers, but I can almost guarantee that there will be plenty on these next couple that you've never heard of in your life. With that said, Tier 4 is when the iceberg goes from huge to more huge. So let's begin. Editing note, Tier 4 is taking a lot longer to do than I initially anticipated. I'm going to split each tier into its own part until we get past the mega tiers. Once we get into the lower tiers, then we may get back into multiple tier videos again. For a brief recap, red is for Zornographic games, green is for mods and fan games, orange is for games based around extremist ideologies, and purple is for games with an optional Zorn patch. Alright, Tier 3. The first tier was Zorn. Just as a heads up, I obviously can't show the Zorn on YouTube, so if these games have any non-Zorn scenes, I might throw those up, but I'll probably just put videos of kittens and dogs or something. At this point in the iceberg, I'm also taking my foot fully off the spoiler brake, and I'll be talking about these less as elevator pitches and instead in a more freeform manner. I'm also likely to skip talking about the plot entirely for some, especially the Zorn games, instead focusing on what makes them disturbing. This goes for future tiers as well. Have you ever wanted to clean up slop and slime after a violent series of murders? Well, Viscera Cleanup Detail is for you. In the game, you, and potentially a couple friends, are tasked with being the cleanup crew after several gory scenes take place, usually based on specific movie scenes, like a level based on The Thing. The most famous level, however, is the Christmas level, where Santa snapped and wrecked everything in sight. This feels like more of a Tier 2 level game because it was pretty popular, especially the Christmas level, but it still definitely deserves a spot on the iceberg regardless. So the fucking devs of Cooking Companions commented on the last part, and their game isn't on the iceberg, so I'm gonna give them a bonus entry here because I felt bad. Cooking Companions is a 2021 visual novel experience in which you have 4 travelers staying at your cabin. You need to do some cooking, with help from your trusted associates, the Chompettes. As this is more of a Tier 1 or 2 game, I'll leave it there, spoiler free. What I will say is that the game has fucking 11 endings, and there is a free demo version on Steam called Cooking Companions Appetizer Edition. So check that out if you want to unravel the game yourself. The Condemned games are criminally underrated and forgotten games, mostly because they're pretty difficult to get working properly on modern systems. The first game has you playing as an FBI agent, doing forensic investigation into various underground killings, and you're eventually framed for the murder of 2 police officers, needing to exonerate yourself while uncovering deeper mysteries, keeping contact with your FBI partner in secret. The game is notable for its dark and grungy setting, which is pretty obvious from the name, with its most iconic scene definitely being the locker scene, where you're goaded into getting a close-up of a body in a locker. And right when you get up in its face...
Help me!
Unless I'm mistaken, One Chance is our first browser-based game and first Flash game. One Chance has a simple premise. You've unleashed a cure for cancer in a gas form across the globe, but it starts attacking all living cells, leaving you to find a cure in 6 days. The game is notable for using cookies to make sure you only get one chance at playing through the game, hence the name. The game has branching pathways that can lead to multiple endings, including one where you save the world, or what's left of it, and one where everything goes to shit and everyone's dead. Mario is simply a creepypasta ROM hack for Super Mario World, and it's notable for being one of the most well-known creepypastas of all time. The story goes like this. It's December 28th, 2010. User Adam drops the link and a story regarding a ROM hack he downloaded out of boredom on Super Mario World Central, a platform for discussion and sharing of Super Mario World ROM hacks. He talks about some odd things, messages, codes, and other weird stuff in the game. After some research and investigation into a text file within the mod on SMW Central, the founder of the website, Kieran Minner, converted a text file within the mod to a JPEG, uncovering this image. The image was related back to a line within the mod that said, "Victim 1. Eyeballs were unable to be found. The victim was found lying on her carpet. Causes of death unknown. Hand marks with unidentifiable fingerprints were found all over the corpse." Now this is a bit more of a personal note, but back in the day, Like, way back in the day when this story was new. This face scared the shit out of me. I don't know why. I couldn't look at it. It scared the shit out of me. One of the biggest and most influential Flash games of all time, Pico's School was developed by Tom Fulp, creator of Newgrounds, and released in 1999. The game features Pico stopping a school shooting by fighting his way through the school. For this, I really shouldn't have to explain why the game is dark, as it literally takes place during a school shooting. Fun, or not so fun, fact about this is that the game was released just 3 months after the Columbine Massacre. As of recent, the main character Pico has appeared in Friday Night Funkin', which pays homage to other Newgrounds icons, with Pico being one of the main duels in the base game, which has brought it somewhat back into the mainstream. A pretty cool meta-fictional game, Pony Island has you interacting with an old arcade cabinet taken over by Satan, Devil, Satan, Lucifer, Devil. In short, it's the classic haunted, possessed video game story archetype, with you trying to save yourself and the souls trapped within the game. Unlike other games with similar concepts, one thing I kinda respect about Pony Island is that it doesn't try to fucking hide it at all. Like, the Steam page's first line is legit, Pony Island is a suspense puzzle game in disguise. It's a breath of fresh air from all the other happy game is actually evil games. But hey, that's just me. Right out of the gate, I have no idea how this game caught on so much because it's fucking goofy looking. Awoni is another RPG Maker classic where you're locked in a mansion with your homies and a monster named the Blue Demon. He's fucking purple, bro, what? If you've never played it, a solid comparison here would be Mr. X from Resident Evil 2, but goofy looking. Goofy as fuck. At the end of the day, it's free and still playable on modern machines, so it's worth a shot if RPG Maker horror is your thing, and you've somehow never played this. Another RPG Maker original, The Crooked Man is a slightly more recent RPG Maker release, coming out in 2012 compared to games like Yume Nikki and Awoni, which both released in 2004. Since it's another RPG Maker game, the gameplay is pretty basic, so the main draw of this game is discovering what the heck is going on with this funny-necked fella. You go into town, asking around to some clowns, and skip forward a bit. The people in town are representations of the Crooked Man's past life traumas, and the reasons for why he hung himself. Depending on your actions, there's multiple endings, which are all pretty different from each other, and the game is the first in a series by the developer Uri Games. Third in a row RPG Maker game, Mad Father released in 2012, with a remake in 2016 and later 2020 for the Switch. Set in northern Germany, you play as Aya, an 11-year-old girl who is tasked with uncovering her father's secrets in his secret evil lab. Yeah, the dad is a serial killer who enjoys taxidermying victims, and wishes to do so to his daughter. That's the gist of it. It's hard to talk about the RPG Maker games beyond a base level, because gameplay-wise they're all very similar. But with that said, this is still a great game. The Static Speaks My Name is a short, and I'm talking under 10 minutes short, and free little indie horror experience where you wake up, have breakfast, chit-chat with your friends online, electrocute a prisoner you have trapped in a wall, and become the Crooked Man. It's a neat little experience, and being that it's free and genuinely only about 7 minutes, it's worth a playthrough. After a volcanic eruption causes a worldwide volcanic winter that decimates society in the 19th century, you need to manage the last city on Earth, managing citizens, resources, the law, and more. Frostpunk is a steampunk city management game from 2018, with a sequel currently in the works. The game has multiple scenarios to choose from which dictate the story of the game and how difficult the game will be. This isn't a horror game, but it is notable for its very grim tone and the ability to become a full-on dictator, including forcing child labor in coal mines, forcing workers to work 24-hour shifts, and more. Andy's Apple Farm is a retro-styled game which poses as a lost beta build of an unreleased game from the late 80s. The game has you playing as Andy the Apple, doing mini-games around the apple farm, with frequent visual glitches and oddities occurring during the activities. The game is chapter-based and currently only has one chapter out, so I'm not going to go very deep as the story is currently unfinished, but the game's main antagonist is a mysterious entity just called the Entity. The Entity tormented the family behind the game, leading to numerous tragedies in their lives, and later imprisoned the souls of the entire family within the game Andy's Apple Farm. Also placing itself in the game is a character named Peter the Pumpkin, allowing it to further torment the family from within the game. But again, this one is unfinished, so I don't have all the answers as of yet. One really cool thing with this game is that the developer created an ARG or unfiction type series with it, having the in-universe great nephew of the developer playing through the game on YouTube, saying that he found an old game in his great uncle's computer. Happy's Humble Burger Farm has you working a new job at the titular restaurant. You occasionally notice odd visual glitches, but otherwise it's normal. Skipping forward a bit, the entire town takes place in a simulated environment, with the inhabitants having chips in their heads, including you, to make you comply and to make you see things that aren't really there. When you end up frying yours near the end of the game, it's revealed that entire buildings are just sets made out of wood. The whole thing is conducted by megacorporation Obscura Biotechnology in an underground lab they built. Throughout the game, you encounter various mascots for the restaurant, who you later encounter in asset form, where they go full kill mode. The game ends with you escaping the facility, getting jump scared, and then a sweet guitar solo plays. Hello Puppets is another VR original, released in 2020. The game has you investigating an abandoned warehouse, which was previously used to film a puppet show in the 80s. Once inside, the puppets try to cast a spell to take control of your mind, but it goes wrong, leaving you with a sound mind. The rest of the game has you trying to evade evil puppets to escape the facility, with only a slightly less evil puppet attached to your arm to help. Vanish is a 2013 indie game which has you exploring a maze-like sewer system in near complete darkness. The game has weird monsters in the sewers, mole men, who will try to attack the player when found. However, as they're blind, if the player stands still, the mole men will just walk right past. The game has notes on the walls which will help guide the player in terms of what to do and what's going on, but that's all you get in terms of lore and help. Overall, this is a very simple yet very effective game. Back 4 Blood is a spiritual successor to the Left 4 Dead series, made by a lot of the original developers. The game is very similar, being a 4-person zombie shooter with special types of infected that all have different abilities. What sets Back 4 Blood apart is the skill system, which has you making builds based on different cards that give you different effects, whereas Left 4 Dead has no form of leveling whatsoever. I'm leaving it at that because there really isn't too much more to say about this game. Your Boyfriend is a horror visual novel, having you deal with a yandere who will do anything to earn your love. I don't know how much more I can say about this one because I read the creator is very iffy about the content of the game being posted online, and I don't know if that includes just talking about it. Either way, yandere stories are pretty similar to each other, with this one having the character Peter lusting after you over the course of 5 days. And the game has content such as murder, gore, drug use, kidnapping, and non-consensual intimacy. From the same director as Deadly Premonition, Dark Dreams Don't Die is an Xbox Connect game, later released for PC. The game is episodic and had 2 episodes released before being shelved, leaving the story on a cliffhanger. As for gameplay, D4 has you, David Young, investigating his wife's murder, and upon finding clues which relate to it, he travels back in time, with the ultimate goal to undo the murder. There's not too much more to go into with this one, as it was canned so quickly, but something I did read was that Deadly Premonition 2 explicitly references this game, with dialogue mentioning that David Young's case ran out of funding. So there's a 1% chance it comes back, I guess, but don't get your hopes up if you're a D4 Dark Dreams Don't Die fanatic. Bible Black, our first red entry, is a Zorn game set in a school which has a witchcraft club practicing black magic in the basement. Upon learning the secrets of black magic, your character has some extreme effects. It's all fun and games until practicing the black magic releases some demons or something. I don't know. I'm not going to play it to find out exactly what goes wrong. This game has 12 fucking endings, by the way. Saw is a 2009 game based on the movies of the same name. If you've seen or just know about the movies, you already should have an idea of what this game's about. You're playing as a detective who has been kidnapped by Jigsaw and placed in an asylum, and you need to make your way through it, avoiding and dealing with all kinds of traps and tests, such as the room filling with toxic gas. A sequel was also released just a year later, with a similar plot and gameplay, and a few extra additions. The Witch's House is a 2012 RPG Maker horror game. It has you wake up in the middle of a forest with only one way to go, as the way back is blocked off by some roses. Ahead of you lies the Witch's House, which you need to explore in order to find something to destroy the roses. While in the house, you're forced to make multiple decisions in order to progress, such as feeding a frog to a snake, or cutting the limbs off a teddy bear. The game has 4 endings, including one where you stand still at the beginning of the game for a full real-life hour, which causes the roses to collapse, allowing you to just walk away. The game also has a remake on Steam, titled The Witch's House MV, with redone graphics and numerous other additions. LSD Dream Emulator is one of the most unique games ever created. The game is based on the dream journal of Japanese artist Osamu Sato, who kept the journal over 10 years. The game is extremely experimental and doesn't really fall into any specific genre. The closest thing I could think of nowadays is a walking sim, but I don't even know if that's accurate. In the game, you explore various weird, surreal, and sometimes spooky settings, walking around until you touch something, which sends you to the next dream, until you're eventually sent back to a menu. Your dreams are rated on a scale, being upper or downer and static or dynamic. There's a sort of enemy in the game, if you can call it that, which fans have dubbed the Grey Man, or the Shadow Man. He's one of few humanoid figures in the game, and if you touch him, it undoes any progress you've made in your dream. If you encounter him in a spookier setting during a dream, it can be pretty freaky. Overall, this is one of the weirdest games ever made, and if you want to try something really, really weird, check this one out. This is the first on the Iceberg where I'm not going to show anything, as this game is actually banned in multiple countries. Grey Play is a game where you control a sex offender who does what the title of the game is to a family, including a 12-year-old girl. Both endings of the game result in you dying, either due to getting murdered by one of your victims or falling onto train tracks. We're gonna move on. Released in 2006, DEF CON is inspired by the film War Games, which had a hacker unknowingly launch a couple nukes. In the game, you take control of a general hidden deep in an underground military bunker. The aim of the game is to win in all-out nuclear war, or rather, lose less than your opponent. You're awarded points for your efficacy and thoroughness in wiping out civilian populations, and win when you wipe out the whole population. Off is a 2008 RPG adventure where you control the Batter, a man on a mission to purify the world. Skipping right to the good stuff, it's revealed that the purifying that the Batter is doing is completely annihilating the world, killing everyone and everything in it. You, the player, are asked in the ending to help stop the Batter, and you can choose to side with or against him. Monster Party is a 1989 NES platformer featuring a bunch of different pop culture monsters, such as the Grim Reaper, Dracula, and Walking Pants. The main notable thing about this game is that way back in the day, images for a Japanese prototype of the game surfaced online, being different to the Western version of the game. It took until 2011 for an actual prototype cartridge to be sold for $6,000, and then until 2014 for the actual contents to be leaked online. As this was Nintendo in the late 80s, the Western version was highly censored, but the Japanese version restores a lot of the more mature content, mostly being blood, but also some monster designs. Siren is a Japanese stealth survival horror from 2003 and 2004 in other regions. I'm sorry to you Siren heads, but I'm only really going to be talking about the first game here. It follows 10 different characters after a supernatural disaster occurs in the small village of Hanuda. The disaster stems from a ritual gone wrong, which has caused the majority of the population to become infected with some kind of illness, which causes them to bleed from their eyes and attack anyone who isn't infected. Along with this, all water in the town has been replaced by another substance that they call red water. The previously mountain village has also now been surrounded by an ocean of red water, meaning the characters can't simply walk away. At the end you kill God and one girl manages to escape the village. Roll credits. The game has a sequel called Forbidden Siren 2, and a third game in the series called Siren Blood Curse, which is more of a remake or reimagining of the first game, rather than a threequel. Out of This World, which also goes by the name Another World, is a 1991 puzzle platformer developed by a solo developer. The game has a physicist named Lester pulling up to his lab in his iconic 1984 Ferrari 288 GTO, going on to conduct an experiment involving a particle collider, which ends when the lab is struck by lightning, teleporting him to an alien planet. He's imprisoned by the aliens and works with a fellow prisoner named Buddy. Near the end, Lester is severely wounded, and Buddy helps him reach a dragon that the two fly off on. The game has inspired numerous works, such as Metal Gear and Silent Hill, and the game's overall reception has been split between calling it mid or calling it the greatest game of all time, which I found interesting. Wadanahara, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, so I'm just going to call it WAD from now on. So, WAD in the Great Blue Sea is a 2013 RPG Maker game with a 2020 reboot. You play as a sea witch named WAD, and along with your familiars, explore various islands across the sea. After war is declared on your ocean home, WAD needs to keep the invading force out. Skipping to the fucked up parts because this game is long and I don't have time to cover it all, Great Blue Sea has multiple endings, usually involving something fucked up happening, such as your familiars being killed, WAD dying, or in one ending, WAD being struck in the back of the head and given grape juice by the main villain. Keep in mind, WAD is a child in this game. This game can also have some pretty disturbing visuals, shown in some of these examples here. Don't Take This Risk is a free 2016 light horror visual novel, which has you receiving a call from an unknown number. The call is from a man trying to call into a skua-skied hotline, and you, a young woman, need to help him as he is very skua-skidal and in need of help. The man alludes to and sometimes admits that he's done some awful shit, including murder, but you can continue to stay on the line with him. The game has multiple different paths you can take, which can lead to 9 different endings. In some of them, you end up meeting with the man. Within those, you can start a relationship with him or deny his advances. In most endings, the man goes through with his end-lifening, and the game has no happy endings. Needy Streamer Overload is a game which has you managing the needs of a streamer that you're living with. Over the course of the game, you can choose all different kinds of things for the streamer aim to do. Essentially, any real-life streaming categories or general streamer shit you can think of, you can make her partake in. Besides streaming, you also need to manage her life outside the internet, which can include giving her drugs, which she can and will overdose on if you give her too much. The game has fucking 22 different endings, most of which are pretty depressing, and I would not have the time to list them all here, so check them out on your own time if you want to find out. This game is also less than a year old, so I'd recommend just supporting the dev and picking it up if you can. A spiritual successor to the game Sarah is Missing, and from the same creators, Simulacra is a game where you find the phone of a missing woman and need to dig through it to piece together what happened to her. After a bunch of oddities, glitches, and corruptions, it's revealed that the phone has an AI living within it, calling itself Simulacra. This AI assimilates its victims, possessing their form to find new victims. The series has 3 games, 4 if you count Sarah is Missing, and a new entry is also currently in development. I'm sorry if that sounded like an E3 press conference. At Dead of Night is a very unique game, mixing full motion video and more traditional gameplay into one experience. The game has the protagonist Maya exploring a haunted hotel, trying to free her friends after they were all captured, tied up, and locked in the rooms by the manager of the hotel, Jimmy Hall. Throughout the game you receive messages from the ghost of Jimmy's past, which reveal their stories to you, with you eventually learning that Jimmy is being possessed by his abusive father, who is also trying to fully take over his body. At the end you escape with your friends, leaving the possessed Jimmy behind. It's worth noting that in the ending it's possible Jimmy catches your friends and permanently kills them. One Shot is an RPG Maker game having you help a cat-like kid named Nico save the world. The game plays heavily into metafictional elements and frequently has the player doing things such as looking at their desktop or into some files on their computer to help progress. The game isn't really scary or dark, but both endings are pretty depressing, where in one Nico ends up saving the world at the cost of his own life, and in the other he lets the world fade away while saving himself. This game is very beloved in any spaces I've seen it mentioned, so I'm sorry to the One Shot gang if this entry isn't doing it justice. So this entry is referring to the game Sad Satan, which was first shown off on the channel Obscure Horror Corner, who claimed he had found the game on the deep web. Sometime later, a post on 4chan appeared claiming to be the real Sad Satan, which contained a download link to a version of the game that had extreme imagery, including CP and very graphic gore. Fun fact about this, it's very likely that the 4chan guy who posted the real version got arrested in 2017 for possession of CP, so that's good. As for the game itself, it's nothing special. You walk through monochromatic hallways and sometimes images pop up on your screen. Some fucked up, some not. Drakengard is a series of 3 games and a few spin-offs. In case you're unaware, this spin-off series is Nier, which we've already talked about earlier. The original Drakengard game is an action role-playing game with 2 distinct playing styles. One similar to Dynasty Warriors, and the other similar to Panzer Dragoon. For dark elements, there's plenty, with some standout ones being that 2 of the recruits you can get have their own backstories that are revealed later on. These backstories include topics of pedophilia and cannibalism of children. Fun. Never-Ending Nightmares is a game about a man whose nightmares seem to be never-ending. This is proven false when his nightmares end in all 3 endings. Jokes aside, this game is the creator's take on his own battle with mental illness, and has violence, self-harm, monsters, and more. Agony is a 2018 survival horror set in actual hell that was critically destroyed on release. The game has you traveling through hell in order to meet with the Red Goddess, as she has the ability to bring you back to life. After meeting with her and being tasked with freeing the Beast down in the lower levels of hell, one ending has you breaking the Beast's binds and freeing it, which results in the Red Goddess bringing you back to life. The catch is that her plan with the Beast is to conquer Earth, and you die soon after being revived to the same Beast that you set free. As for why I've listed the game under the purple rating, this game was originally rated to release as an adults-only title, so the company was forced to cut a bunch of more graphic imagery to fit with a mature rating. Things were kind of silent after that, until an uncut version of the game Shadow dropped on Steam, adding more graphic violence, sexual imagery, and generally updated graphics. Alone in the Dark is a long-running survival horror franchise that started way back in 1992, and has a new game coming out at some time in the future. Just going over the first game here, Alone in the Dark was the first 3D survival horror game, which was a huge breakthrough, as 3D games were just beginning to emerge in general at that time. For reference, this is the same year Wolfenstein 3D was released. This game was also one of the main inspirations for the Resident Evil series, so all in all it's a very important game. The game itself is pretty simple, having you explore a haunted mansion looking for a way to escape, solving puzzles and fighting monsters along the way. The game lets you choose between either a private detective or the niece of the mansion's owner. By the way, this ability to choose what character you play as is what inspired Resident Evil games to do the same in games like RE1 and 2. As a bonus, that new game I mentioned earlier is a reimagining of this first game, coming out sometime soon, so be on the lookout for that. School Days is an unusual visual novel, in that it uses fully animated scenes rather than static images. The game lets you pick between various options in the story that can affect your outcome, including who you get to have sex with, so it's your typical adult visual novel. Another result of these choices is determining which ending is achieved, and some of the endings in this game are ridiculous. One has a girl get her jugular slit as the slicer maniacally laughs and the game cuts to black. Another has a girl jump off a building head first, killing her instantly. And in another, you have sex. These games were also released on PS2 and PSP, but without any of the Zorn scenes, and they were still hugely popular. So the Zorn isn't what's driving this game's popularity. Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion is an indie title that at first seems like a joke game making fun of basic horror games with cheap, not very scary jump scares around every corner. The game has you trying to get through 1,000 rooms, and the further you get, the more of an actual horror game it becomes. And by the halfway point, you've likely forgotten all about the initial comedic mood of the game. The game ends with you either becoming one of the monsters you see throughout the game, or joining a ghost army. There is also a secret alternate ending, where if you disabled jump scares and monsters in the options menu and went through all 1,000 rooms, you get a half-hearted congratulations from the titular character. Calm Time has the player living out in the middle of nowhere, inviting a bunch of people over for a party. Shit hits the fan when the game reveals you're a murderer and you have to kill everyone at the party. So you kill everyone at the party. Presentable Liberty takes place entirely in a prison cell, with you receiving letters that progress the game's story from a few different characters. The plot involves a man named Dr. Money, plotting to become the richest man in the world by unleashing a deadly virus and selling the antidote. This plot ends up wiping out most of humanity except for a few people, including you. The game ends with your two friends who are sending you letters dead, and the choice to either leave the cell or remain. If you choose to stay, Dr. Money harvests your organs and remains the last person on Earth. I really didn't think we'd see any more fucking Kinect horror games on the Iceberg, yet here we are. Haunt is a 2012 Kinect cartoony horror game set in a haunted mansion. You explore it while avoiding monsters, using your real-life body movements to control a flashlight, open doors, and more. I really couldn't be fucked to go more in depth on this one. Does anyone really care about the fucking Kinect games on here? So with a bit of searching, I came across two different Siren Head games that were made within 15 days of each other. One being Siren Head: The Siren's Forest, and the other named Siren Head Awakening. These two games are not connected in any way except for the main antagonist, who was created by Trevor Henderson. So I'm just going to go over both because why not? Starting with The Siren's Forest. The Siren's Forest has the protagonist wake up after a night of his iconic drinking and driving. He finds himself in the Siren's Forest where 3 teenagers previously went missing. Ooh, that's it. That's all I've got for you. Number 2, Siren Head Awakening. Siren Head Awakening is a Slender clone that has you finding car parts that you need to bring back one by one to your car. This random forest just coincidentally happens to have every part you need. Both these games are kind of bad, but they're free, so they're not hurting anybody. Also, if you're watching this in the future, this may be outdated and there might be 15 more games, so this is what's out at the time of recording. Craven Manor is another free indie horror game where you explore the titular mansion, which dynamically changes throughout the game. The game lets you change the layout of the manor by interacting with a miniature model of it, and when you add a room, that room gets added to the real thing. As for enemies, the game has statues that move towards you when you aren't looking at them, similar to SCP-173. The game frequently cuts the lights in the mansion as well, meaning that they'll usually be up your ass. Valiant Hearts: The Great War is a Ubisoft game released in 2014 to coincide with the 100th anniversary of World War I. The game is a 2D puzzle platformer game with a comic book art style. The game was meant to help remember and acknowledge the realities of World War I, including the use of chemical weapons, generals knowingly sending their men to die, prisoners of war, and more. The game may look charming with its art style, but it does have some very heavy-hitting gut-punch moments. It was recently announced as of writing that Valiant Hearts 2 was in development for fucking Netflix gaming. So, get pogged for that, gamers. Moirai was an experimental indie game that is now gone forever. The game had you exploring a small town, making a few small choices that didn't really matter. Eventually, you come across a cave and are told to go find a lumberjack's brother who went in a while ago, but hasn't returned, and the lumberjack gives you a lantern. Upon finding his brother, he gives you a knife and says that an odd moaning is coming from within the cave, so you investigate, maybe thinking you're about to fight a monster or something. You come across a farmer with blood-spattered clothes, a lantern, and a knife. You ask him 3 questions. Why do you have blood on your overalls? Why do you have a knife? And, I heard moans. What have you done? This is where the game gets interesting, as the answers are different each time. But we'll circle back to that. You can either choose to let him go or kill him, based on his response. But either way, you need to continue into the cave. Deeper in, you find a bloodied woman, who came into the cave to be killed, as she wants to be with her deceased husband and child. You could choose to kill her, or spare her life. If you end up sparing her, she spits blood at you. No matter what you choose, you end up leaving the cave and are questioned by a farmer, who asks you those same 3 questions from earlier, to which you type your own replies. After this, the game ends. If you somehow didn't piece it together, your responses here are what's given to the next player to play the game, no matter what they are. After a short while, you'll get an email recapping your responses and then the outcome of those responses, telling you if the player after you ended up killing you or not. Sadly, this game got targeted very heavily by hackers and was permanently pulled from all storefronts, making it one of the most unique games lost to time forever. Leia is a 2014 indie horror game that was cancelled midway through development, leaving only an unfinished build of the game left to play. The game is first person and has you walking around a dark house, looking at various notes and photos to learn the lore. There's also a few jump scares, but no real way to lose. The game is short, clocking in at around 20 to 30 minutes, so there's really not much to talk about here. Just an obscure little Unity game from way back in the day. Paranoiac is an RPG Maker horror title from 2011 that received a remake in 2019. As a quick aside, it's pretty cool how so many of these RPG Maker horror games get remakes with all kinds of additions to flesh them out more. This one specifically added a lot more to the ending. The game has you moving into your late aunt's house after she crooked-manned herself due to a series of traumatic events happening in quick succession. The protagonist, Miki, partly blames herself for her aunt taking her own life. Within the house, a strange creature lurks at night, which chases you around. There's also just generally creepy things happening, like weird sounds echoing throughout the house. The endings have you confronting the monster, either accusing it of being a hallucination or accepting that it's real. If you deny its existence, Miki is attacked and killed by it. It's then revealed in a newspaper that Miki's body was covered in self-inflicted wounds, meaning that she was hallucinating the monster and ended up taking her own life. If you choose to believe in the monster's existence, it chases you around for a bit until you reach the basement. Once you're down there, it reveals itself to be your deceased aunt. The two of you reconcile and you get knocked out. Afterwards, the strange things happening around the house stop, and Miki is diagnosed and treated for schizophrenia. This is a super condensed recap that didn't even mention Miki's mother's verbal abuse, so I'd recommend looking into this one more if it interests you. Right off the bat, this is a Zorn visual novel that has a lot of story for some reason, but I'm gonna keep it brief. Dramatical Murder was released in 2012 and later in English in 2021. The game takes place in the future and has 4 branching storylines, one for each guy you can smash. Each storyline has multiple choices that determine the ending, and some are really fucked up. Like one has your guy being desensitized, literally, with his eyes, vocal cords, and sense of touch being removed. Another has him getting vored. There was more than one release to this game, so if you've played it and feel like I've done it a disservice or got something wrong, let me know. Misao is another RPG Maker classic. from the same creator as Mad Father, which we talked about a bit earlier. The game has your school teleported to another dimension, with your classmates thinking it's due to a curse from Misao, as she's been missing, thought to be dead for the last 3 months. She was also ruthlessly bullied by her classmates until she disappeared. The game is notable for having a lot, and I mean a lot, of possible ways to die. The fucking funniest one is this. This motherfucker was scared of a phone and fucking died. Here's a few other notable ones. The actual goal of the game is to collect 6 body parts of the titular character, bringing them to an altar, and also to sacrifice one of 2 characters at the altar. Who you choose to sacrifice determines which ending you're gonna get. One ending has the whole cycle being reset, and the other has Misao's bullies being erased from existence and memory. I left this one kind of vague because there's a lot of other things that happen in this story that I didn't want to get into because it's worth playing on your own, even if that's just to see the silly deaths. The Theater was originally a creepypasta, which detailed a lost game of the same name. The game was released around the mid-90s and had the player continually walking into a movie theater. Each time you would talk to a ticket taker, walk in, and the screen fades to black. After many cycles, the ticket taker will be gone, and upon walking in, the game will fade to black, but you can continue walking in as it didn't really reset you. Eventually, players reach the ticket taker, but with a swirly face. He screeches and the game crashes for a few minutes, eventually resetting you back to the lobby. There's a few other creepy things after that, but that's the gist of it. Getting into the actual game, or rather games, 3 different takes have been created, being The Theater, a Creepypasta Legend, and Theater Unrest. Starting with The Theater, the first of the 3 is about as close as you can get to a replica of the creepypasta. It's pretty much an exact recreation of what I described above. The Theater, a Creepypasta Legend. The Theater, a Creepypasta Legend is a game more inspired by old 90s full-motion video games with creepy mid-90s-esque renders that are super uncanny valley. This one takes the creepypasta and adds more, letting you explore the theater to uncover its secrets. Theater Unrest is a more modern take on it, being built on what looks like Unreal or Unity. And similar to a Creepypasta Legend, it expands a bit more on the lore and backstory of the theater. Pathologic is a series of 2 games, with Pathologic 2 being sort of a remake with added elements, so I'll just talk about the first one here. The game has you playing as one of 3 characters, with each character offering minor differences in the main story. You live in a plague-ridden town infected with the sand plague that you're trying to find the source of. As the main goal, you're tasked with completing quests each day for 12 days to keep a group of people called your bound safe. You also have the secondary task of simply staying alive during the 12 days as well. Both of these games have very intricate stories, and it would be almost impossible to do them justice, so I'm gonna just say give them a try if you've never heard of these. They're great games. Lakeview Cabin is a very short little horror game that has a collection of sequels out, but we're just going to talk about the original for now. The game has you playing as Red, a man who killed his wife by drowning her in a lake. He frequently has hallucinations or possibly sees her actual ghost just hanging out. Eventually, her corpse comes back to attack him, and Red can kill her in a few different ways. As she was pregnant when he initially dumped her, a fetus pops out of her corpse, also attacking Red, which he also kills. This one may sound rushed, but the game is actually under 5 minutes long if you know what to do. Anyways, like I mentioned, this game has a bunch of sequels, but it would take a lot longer to go over each one of them since they got progressively more elaborate. So I'm ending this one here. Hello Hell-O is another RPG Maker horror game, with this one's main gimmick being that it has almost fucking 40 endings. The game takes place in a small room, which allows you to fiddle with various things to achieve different endings. Each ending you achieve also changes up the room for the next one. You play as Kazuki, who's currently having some relationship issues with his girlfriend Akari. After a few endings, it's revealed that the game is taking place between 2 different dimensions, where in one, you're alive and being hunted by the ghost of Akari, and in the other you're dead and haunting her. Once you get the true ending, which is ending fucking 37 by the way, you reunite the alive and dead versions with their respective partners. There's also several bad endings where you get killed, but overall it's a bit tamer compared to some of the other RPG Maker games on here. Darkwood is a 2014 top-down survival horror game. The game is set in 1980s Poland, after a forest has taken over a large chunk of land and a disease has ravaged the citizens, turning them into all kinds of monsters and odd creatures. During the day, you scavenge for supplies, trying to avoid conflict and preparing for night. where you need to defend a safe house from intruders. This sounds simple, but Darkwood Nights are some of the most tense and stressful things fucking ever. One of the endings has the player uncover a massive chamber of people curled up and in a trance-like state around a massive thing called the Being. The player can pick up a flamethrower and burn the Being and the thousands of people around it to the ground, which proceeds to engulf both the player and the forest at large. Quickly skimming over Kanye Quest 3030, the game is a fun little RPG Maker game where Ye travels to 3030 to overthrow Lil B. The game has a bunch of in-jokes for the hip-hop community, and is a fun little game. The reason it's on here is likely due to the ARG hidden within the game, where typing Ascend into a specific dialog box would bring you to a news screen, essentially telling you the whole game was a front. The game would then give you a QR code which brought you to an IP logging website. Skipping forward a bit, you'd be prompted to enter your personal information. Upon doing so, you'd get a message saying to wait until you're contacted. And that's as far as I'll go with it because it's been covered pretty heavily elsewhere, and I don't want to get into it too much. Also, it was proven like completely fake, so it doesn't really matter. I think it's time we speed things up a little. Let's go for a lightning round. Let's fucking go! Super Columbine Massacre RPG. Self-explanatory from the title, Super Columbine Massacre RPG is an RPG Maker game depicting the massacre, often using real images from the event. The latter half of the game has the two gunmen going through hell and fighting demons. Paranormal HK is a first-person horror game set in, from what I've read, a pretty faithful recreation of Hong Kong. You're part of a film crew that ends up encountering all sorts of supernatural beings. The game has you solving puzzles and avoiding anything paranormal you come across by hiding from it, similar to Outlast. 7 Days is a game with a very minimal plot, having you wake up and attempt to escape a house. You can seemingly never find an exit and wake up again and again in the original room. This keeps repeating, and every time you awaken the house is changed up. You're also being chased by a shadowy monster named Sam. One of a few reverse horror games on here. Carry On has you playing as a pile of meat with tentacles. You make your way through a facility, killing anyone in your way. Over the course of the game, you can evolve and grow larger, which allows you to kill better as the Murder Meatball. The ending has you transforming into the form of a human scientist, reminiscent of the movie The Thing, and escaping the facility. Similar to Fatal Frame, Dreadout has you exploring a haunted town, this time in Indonesia. Due to the setting, the game features all kinds of Indonesian myths and legends. As previously mentioned, the game is similar to Fatal Frame in that you can interact with the ghosts using various devices. Calling is a first-person, motion-controlled horror game released for the Wii in 2009. The game features several haunted locations in an alternate reality, and has ghosts that jump scare the player, which can be shaken off by literally shaking them off with the Wiimote. I want to start this one off by saying that the top results on Google for a lot of these indie horror games are from fucking Let's Player wikis, which shows how much of a surface level we're still on. Moving on, Vapor is a 2015 indie horror game that has a warlock who was tortured and held captive for his whole life by a cult, trying to fight his way out of hell after being executed by said cult. This game is a part 1, however, I don't think the series continued past it, but I may be wrong on that, I don't know. Psycho no Sutika, or Psycho Stalker, is a survival horror game set in a high school. You're not alone in the high school, being hunted by Psycho-chan, a yandere girl who wants to be with you forever. Her personality has also been split in two, having a passive half and an aggressive half. The latter will have her hunting down the player, trying to actively kill him, while the former will simply follow him around, sometimes helping him, unless you make her mad. After some time has passed, the aggressive side may start pretending to be the passive half, luring the player right into her grasp. Her AI is built to be more than just see player, kill player, and she has all kinds of tricks and devious schemes she can pull to try and kill you. To get out of the school, you're going to have to find various keys scattered around, which unlock classrooms and eventually help you get out. Upon escape, one ending has Psycho impale herself on a piece of glass, begging the protagonist to help her. He does not. Set in a Thai hospital, Aria has you playing as 3 different protagonists trying to piece together the murder of Aria. As stated, the game has 3 protagonists. The first, Marissa, is a young girl who received a message to come to the hospital from the long-dead Aria. The second, Rama, is a security guard for the hospital. And the third, Boone, is a gambler doing a task for a gang to pay off some debts. Skipping right to the end, Arya's corpse is found and is being used for a ritual. Rama puts an end to it and frees Arya's spirit. The game's primary scare factor comes with the intense and very well done atmosphere and sound design, which is hard to convey in this format, but I had to at least mention it because it is by far the thing that the game is most praised for. Sally Face is an episodic point-and-click adventure game consisting of 5 episodes, with a sequel in the works. The game has you playing as Sal Fisher, a teenager, and in later episodes an adult, with a prosthetic face. As stated earlier, the game is split up into 5 episodes. Here's an extremely brief rundown of each. Episode 1, Strange Neighbors. Sal and his father are moving into an apartment complex. Just before moving in, someone is murdered. Sal works with the witness, Larry, to collect evidence, and they get the killer arrested. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Sal talks to Larry from episode 1 who claims he's been cursed by a demon in the building. Sal modifies his iconic Game Boy to find the demon and successfully wards off the demon. Episode 3, The Bologna Incident. Sal investigates a strange-tasting bologna at his school, which takes him to the supplier, his math teacher. He breaks into her apartment and finds the bologna is being made out of human meat. One of Sal's friends, Ash, falls down a laundry chute that reveals a cult is living under the apartment. Sal and his gang end up saving Ash. Episode 4, The Trial. 5 years later, Sal is keeping tabs on the cult. He gets a message from the original witness and he goes to check on him, finding him dead by his own hand. All other residents in the building are covered with some strange growth, and the ghost of Larry accompanies Sal in getting to the building's owner. When they find him, he's a gross thing, and Sal kills it. The owner tells Sal he's got to kill everyone in the building to end the infection. Sal does, and gets put to death for killing an entire apartment worth of people. Episode 5, Sons of Liberty. After Sal kicks the bucket, Ash from episode 3 takes the reins in terms of keeping tabs on the cult. She rigs the place to fucking blow, and lets Sal take control of her through her arm. Sal defeats the cult, and post-credits is revealed that 33% of Earth is already fucked, so it's way too late. Anyways, that's Sally Face. I don't know how to end this. Lomando, or Fancy Island, is a really weird website, which initially disguises itself as a fun little RPG. Once you click beyond the surface level, the game takes a dark turn, throwing all kinds of creepy, surreal, and just weird imagery at you, along with weird puzzles that you need to solve in order to progress. This one is hard to explain, so I'd honestly recommend just going to the website yourself and giving it a try. It's also a mobile app if you prefer that. Worlds.com is like taking a time portal to the 90s, and nowadays it's one of the most liminal games available. The game, also known as Worlds Chat, was one of, if not the first, metaverse, a concept I'm sure we're all familiar with by now, being first released in 1995 and still being available today. The game was way ahead of its time, with most potential users in the mid-90s simply not being able to run it, whether due to computer specs or internet speed. The game had the player pick a username and avatar, allowing them to explore a number of hub worlds and just hang out. Of course, nowadays, most of these hubs are completely dead. This includes the most iconic hub, a David Bowie hub. The game was quickly overtaken in popularity by games like its slightly younger brother Active Worlds, which released just a few months later, and then in 2003 it was just demolished with the release of Second Life. There are rumors and talks of potential cult or generally creepy users in the game, but longtime users have come forward saying that any of these players are just trying to be creepy for the sake of it. So really, this is just an old game, pretty much long forgotten by everyone. And that's what it will remain to be for the rest of time until it's fully shut down. Not many people stick around to the outro, so if you are here, thanks for hanging out. Sorry this one took a bit, and that it's only one tier, but I would prefer to keep these around an hour to an hour and a half per part. If I included tier 4 on here, this legit would have been like fucking 2 or 2.5 hours, so I just split it off into its own video. Also, this is just behind the scenes. This is becoming progressively harder to research for. A lot of these games literally have nothing online about them. Not in, like, no one's ever heard of them, just no one's fucking talked about them. Ever. With that said, a lot of these, like, no one has talked about these, but they still have Markiplier Let's Plays, so there's that at least. Anyways, once this is all done, it's almost a certainty I'll make a mega version or something like that with some bonus entries, as if there weren't already enough on here. I was also thinking about maybe some fun additions, like in the full version maybe I'll have some intermissions with talking points. Nothing too long, just a couple minutes max maybe. Anyways, I doubt there's more than like 10 people that will ever listen this far in. So, subscribe if you want to stay up to date with the next part. And have a good one.